This is the story of a man that became cricket's first ever global superstar. It can also be called the story of the first ever Indian who played for the English cricket team. It can also be called the story of a cricketing legend that became king. So clearly, this guy has lived a hell of a life. And this guy is called Ranji or Ranjitsinhji. So this story is set in the late 19th century, in the heart of India, amidst the grandeur of princely states. A young man named Ranjitsinhji or Ranji was born with a destiny as extraordinary as the cricket that he would go on to play. Born on September 10th, 1872, in the village of Sarodar, Ranji was the grandson of a man called Jadeja Jalamsinhji. He was distantly related to the ruler of Navanagar, which lied in the Kathiawari peninsula of the Indian subcontinent. Jadeja Jalamsinhji was also an officer of the army and he fought for Navanagar in many wars. And more than once, he actually proved his bravery to the ruler of Navanagar. The ruler of Navanagar at this point was a man called Vibhaji, who lacked an heir for the throne. Now, throughout his whole life, this king wanted to make sure that he doesn't face any problems in succession because he'd seen that happen in his family previously. So, to make sure there are no hiccups, he actually married 14 times. He had 14 wives. But unfortunately, none of them was able to produce a male heir. Now, Vibhaji soon got involved with a woman called Dhanbai. She was a courtesan, she belonged to the labor class, and she had a Muslim heritage. All of these things were looked down upon in the court of Vibhaji. But regardless, both of them got married, and Dhanbai, along with her three sisters, moved into the palace with Vibhaji. Now, you have to remember these three sisters because they play an important role later on in the story. Also, people say that all of these sisters were gorgeous. Now, soon after moving in, Dhanbai and Vibhaji finally have a son, and they named the son Kaloba. There were people in the court at that time who speculated that this is really not Vibhaji's son. They said that this woman Dhanbai, because she's a courtesan, she already was pregnant at the time that they got married. But Vibhaji at this point was so desperate for a male heir that he was like, no, this is definitely my son, so shh. But unfortunately, he soon had to banish and disinherit the boy. Because turns out, this kid, when he grew up, he tried to poison his father. So now once again, the state of Navanagar was left without an heir to the throne. And this time, Vibhaji decided to follow an old tradition and adopt someone from another branch of his own family. For this, he recalled his distant relative who had proven himself time and time again, the guy I mentioned earlier, Jadeja Jalamsinhji. And he went to this guy and asked for one of his sons, which he could adopt, and then that son would become the heir to the throne of Navanagar. And Jadeja happily obliged. So Vibhaji was now the father of this new kid called Ummeed Singh, who was a son of Jadeja Jalamji Singh. But unfortunately, this kid didn't last even a year. He was poisoned at court. And a lot of historians and people speculate that it was probably Dhanbai or one of the sisters who did this. Now again, in the hunt of an heir, Vibhaji turns once more to the same guy, Jadeja, and this time he asks for his grandson whose father had recently passed away. And this is how he became the father of Ranjitsinhji. Now this time, Vibhaji took every precaution. Ranjitsinhji was only 7 years old, so he definitely couldn't defend himself in the court. So Vibhaji basically handed him over to the British authorities and told them to take care of the kid, educate him, and then get him ready for the ascension to the throne. And these British officials were instructed to keep this kid as far away as possible from the palace. Now, this adoption would have a profound effect on Ranji's life moving forward, as it opened up the doors to an elite education and a future that would take him far beyond the borders of this land that they called home. Now, for some time, Ranjitsinhji stayed in his hometown village of Sarodar, but his official education began in the Rajkumar College located in Rajkot. This was one of the premier institutions that was established by the British in order to educate these young princes that come from all these different princely states. It was here that he excelled in his studies and he started to learn new crafts. This was the same place where he first started getting cricket lessons from a Parsi named Kawasji Desai. Now, while Ranji was busy studying his heart out in Rajkot, a scheme was brewing back home. Now, you remember I mentioned that Dhanbai moved in with all three of her sisters? Well, one of those sisters, Janbai, actually announces the birth of a child. More specifically, the birth of a male child. And she claimed that this is Vibhaji's own son. Even at that time, there was a lot of speculation among the courtiers that this is definitely not his son. This child was brought into the Zenana from outside and this is just a plot. But Vibhaji, for whatever reason, obviously we don't know the actual reason. People say that he was pressurized by the sisters, or that maybe he was still a little desperate. He basically went on with the plan and he said, yes, this is my son. So we really don't know. It actually could be his son as well. What we do know is that Vibhaji reached out to the British officials in Bombay and asked them to remove Ranjitsinhji as the heir and replace him with this new baby, which was now called Jaswant. The government was like, no, because the adoption and everything, all of that is binding. You can't just take it back whenever you want. Another argument they put forward was that Janbai is not even a Rani. She's not even your legitimate wife. So how can you have an heir to the throne that is not legitimate? But at this point, Vibhaji basically pulled in a few of his favors. At this point, Vibhaji basically pulled in a couple of favors and he reached out to the viceroy at that time directly. His name was Lord Ripon. And so, just like that, Jaswant became the new heir to the throne of Navanagar. And throughout this entire time, Ranjitsinhji or Ranji is back in Rajkot and he's studying. Now, getting back to his story. So, now because this was a school that was made for princes, with the princes came their attendants and a proper entourage. Ranji, when he first came to the college, was also accompanied by like 17 other servants, which included barbers, coachmen, tutors for Gujarati. And other than these 17 servants, he had footmen and guards. And similarly, all the other princes came with their own entourages. So what turned out to happen was that while these princes would sit in the class and take these lectures, each of their attendants and guards would be standing somewhere close by, somewhere within reach to be able to protect the princes, right? So outside the classes, there'll be like a mob of people which are attendants for different princes. So in a way, the school was filled with attendants because the princes would be relatively smaller in number. But all of this did change while Ranji was still at school, because the headmaster at that time, he convinced a lot of these princely states that you just need one attendant with the prince. We'll take care of everything else. So it started to look more like a normal school. One of the first records where we see Ranji's name is in the report of speech day in 1880, where he's listed as number 35 Ranjitsinhji of Navanagar. Ranji's progress at the college was very promising. By the age of 13, he had won a gold medal for speaking English, and same year, he also won the gymnastics prize. By the age of 16, it was well known in the entire school that he is by far the best cricketer. Also, he was the second head boy. Now, I'm assuming here that there were two head boys. So in 1888, now the college decides that they're going to take 3 of these Kumars or princes to England for further studies. Now, among those who were selected was, of course, Ranjitsinhji or Ranji. The other 2 were Ramsinhji of Sihor and Mansoor Kachar of Jashan. Now, by this time, Ranji was well aware of everything that had happened back at home, that how he's already been disinherited and a new kid has taken his place. He was no longer the heir to the throne, but his expenses were being paid for by the state of Navanagar. He obviously must have been hurt, but he was resilient and very focused on his education. In fact, when the class was graduating, the headmaster of the school was also going back to England with these 3 princes. And in his farewell speech, he actually singled out Ranji and remarked, "A better or manlier boy has never resided within this college. Disappointments and troubles come to us all, and he has had his, and has borne them bravely. Recollecting his college career, I think he may look back without regret. I speak of him because he has taken so marked a lead in the college that he will be specially remembered." Now, by the time Ranji left college, he was fully aware of another problem that was on the rise. This is a problem a lot of us can relate to, especially in these times of recession. So Ranji too was having financial problems, because obviously he hasn't been the heir to the throne for quite a while now. So even though he's getting some money for his education through the state, but he's not getting the amount he used to get. And for this, people here and there are chipping in for him, which is like wealthy family members and random businessmen. For many, many years to come, Ranji actually stays very short on cash. But he doesn't look like it. If you look at him, people thought he had a very extravagant lifestyle and he's very rich and he kept up those appearances. But in fact, he was struggling a lot with money. So now at the age of 16, Ranji was born the son of a farmer who came to Rajkumar College as the heir to the throne of Navanagar. He was now graduating and leaving the school and going to England as a normal boy with limited assets but a flourishing talent in cricket. And soon enough, he actually reinvents how cricket was played worldwide. So I'll pick it up from here in the next video, and we're going to see all about Ranji's life in England and how he actually became this huge celebrity that even the English could not deny. Now, in England, he went to a very famous university. Do you know which one? Can you guess? If you do, put it down in the comments and I'll let you know if you're correct. See you guys next week.